Okay, today I will be continuing to mod this Geloso 40 watt, that's a Geloso 1040 into a guitar amp. We're gonna start and do some changes to the input. It's a very weird setup. It's not anything you see in a guitar amp. Also the microphone inputs have a completely different plug out. It's a 3-pin in which the two bottom ones are ground and the top one carries a signal. There's also a 22 nano capacitor, where you find in most guitar amps you would find a resistor in this position. There's a very low impedance, a high resistor to ground, 3.3 meg, and another 100 picofarad cap to ground. We might delete this also. The input is very similar to what we find in the 15 watt Geloso. In the 15 watt I removed this 470k resistor. I removed the microphone input, but I left the resistor of 3.3 meg and the capacitor in place. It works out quite well, I think, so I don't tend to change it. The 1040 also has two microphone inputs. Here's one and here's the other one, and they both feed into the grids of both sides of the first tube. They really never mix. We have the same resistor and 100 picofarad capacitor here, and 22 nano in series as in the first input. As we will see, the signal never really travels through both stages or both parts of this first preamp tube. This one is specifically for the other microphone input, and it never mixes. The first input goes here, you can follow the green line, goes over here, and so on. The signal from the other half of the first preamp tube is fed into it here. But they don't mix. There might be possibilities in using both stages in a sort of switchable setup, so you can get extra boost and have the signal go to both stages of the first preamp tube. We'll see about that later on. Here's the input up close. Both input sockets, one beneath the other, with same resistors. Something that's very specific to Geloso is this kind of shield that they put in front of the controls to shield it from interference. Let's get some focus. A further measure they do to make sure the amp is as quiet as possible is that the filaments of the output tubes and the phase inverter are fed with AC voltages, as is the case in most tube amps. But the purple wires and the black ones, the filaments of the preamp tubes, are fed with negative DC in order to prevent interference. Okay, when you're going to work on vintage amps or any vintage gear, especially European gear, you better buy yourself a flathead screwdriver. So I bought one, but then you realize the only thing you really need, unless you want to buy 20 different flathead screwdrivers, the only thing which will really save your life is Leatherman. Okay. Here's a close-up of the input with the resistors to ground, the capacitors in series, and 3.3 meg resistors. They are here on the grids. Here. What we'll be doing is change one input to a normal input like I made on the other Geloso, and make one a dedicated guitar input with a 1 meg to ground and a 68K or maybe 33K to, in series and with the input, so we can compare them. Well, these input plugs seem to be a bit outdated, but in fact I think they're very modern and they're very good and 1,000 times more solid than on a simple input jack. It's completely isolated, and you know how solid they are once you tried to take one out. It's a solid brass ring. I think it looks almost like plumbing. Go off. So the first input is ready. Is it just a normal input? I just removed the 470K resistor to ground. That was in all Geloso schematics and also in the 15 watt. But for the rest it's all simply, I kept the capacitor in line. So it's a standard Geloso input. I will change this one. I will remove the capacitor and put two different resistors in line with the signal as different input resistors and grid stoppers. For a second input, this one, we will have a switchable input, so we can switch resistors between 22K and 68K with a toggle switch that we will put here. This ground point for the phono input is riveted in, so we'll have to do some wrecking. Okay, we have a toggle switch, 2 position. For the second input, we're going to make it a dedicated guitar input. So I already removed this resistor. We will remove the cap, the 3 meg, and the 100 pico as well. Who's there? Hi, Sultan. Comes from the jack here, but we're gonna put 1 meg resistor before the grid stopper. Remove the capacitor and have this switch that chooses either 22K, which is the value Dumble uses. On the other hand, we have the 68 Fender value. And you can select either resistor to go to the grid of the first tube. I have the 68K resistor and the 22K resistor. I have 2 of them here, but these are metal film and these should give lower noise. I don't have a metal film 68K, but I do have this 62K. I might use this to reduce noise. The way the switch will function is here. The signal comes from the jack, goes to the middle pole, which connects either to this one or to the other pole here. When it connects to this pole, it goes to the 22K. When it connects to this pole, it goes to the 68K or 62K. Further on, to the grid of the first tube. Resistors are in place now. Cut out the cap. We will be using isolated cable. This is a cable this is the signal cable, which itself is isolated in the red insulation here, and then again is surrounded by other wire which will serve as the ground wire. And we will only attach one side to the ground to keep all the noise that wants to penetrate through the signal, to catch it in this ground shield, in fact. Okay. The input jack is almost ready. The 1 meg resistor is wired here on the input jack itself, signal wire insulated, and the ground wire that was original. Okay. I've printed out some labels. I wanted to term this one hi-fi and this one guitar, but that's just too bland, so I will go with jazz and blues. We're gonna take a boom to the boom.